What I think could have worked is a touch of unreliable narration on Lexi's part. She orchestrated the deaths of whatever to bring herself into. That would have been beautiful. I wouldn't have liked that.
She set the dynamite on the mountain.
Set the dynamite, yeah,
to start
there you
trigger the
go.
avalanche.
And then Louis in comatose instead of dying, so she has to smother him or whatever, and then reveal that at the end or whatever. That would have been a very beautiful way to tie up the story. It would have been far better. I didn't think this was too bad of a prompt.
Yeah, no.
I was like, this should be fairly interesting.
There's guaranteed action.
You're guaranteed drama. You're guaranteed backstabbing, power grabbing.
You're guaranteed. You're gonna see how the other side lives.
Absolutely.
You know, and be in the air, and you be in the spare. You know, I thought we'd be entertained by this, but I guess we were.
Let's not give.
Pause this video right now. Go and read The Heir Apparent by
Rebecca Armitage. And when you've read it, you can join us for the discussion.
Or you can join us anyway, because we're going to tell you all about it. My name's Elijah.
And I'm Joseph, and welcome to the iShot Library. Welcome back.
Welcome back again. It feels like every time we start a video, we're saying welcome back.
Honestly.
So yeah, what did you think of the book? Any good? Worth reading?
I wouldn't say worth reading. I think if you're going to read something about nobility and inheriting this, inheriting that, there's many better books that you could be reading, many more interesting books you could be reading.
I could write a better bloody book than
We
this.
should do it right now on camera just
on
to
the
prove
spot.
it. 100%. 2 minutes.
Do you want to go first since you have more?
I will. I am beyond excited for this. The commoner to royalty trope has produced some of the best stories in the history of literature, from My Fair Lady to Snow White to more modern productions like Prince of Persia and Kingsman.
When you said Snow White, I thought you was going to say Jon Snow.
Game of Thrones, even that. What's not to be excited about when it comes to backstabbing feudal politics, perhaps a touch of nasty classism, and what could be a better justification for all this than the ultimate crock of gold at the end of the rainbow, the throne of Great Britain? It's all going to be in the execution. Rebecca Armitage has certainly set herself up well here with a great prompt, and this can be a powerful story. With themes of self-sacrifice, duty, and the ultimate realization that the best monarchs are the ones who never wanted the throne in the first place. She could also mess it up quite easily if she turns it into a cheap romance chicklet where our main character gets everything she wants and doesn't grow at all. So, as you can see, after reading some of these books for so long, we're starting to notice a few of the patterns that emerge, rear their ugly heads. But, I was like, give her a chance at least.
Yeah. So, we're introduced to Lexi, an estranged royal who's suddenly thrust into the spotlight after a tragedy wipes out the line of succession ahead of her. Her father, the reigning monarch, and her brother, the original heir, are both killed in a horrific skiing accident. Lexi learns that they died in an avalanche, and honestly, this is where the book is at its strongest. I loved the avalanche scene, even though the author makes the questionable choice to tell us in advance that both men die. The scene itself is still claustrophobic, tense, and genuinely upsetting. We read about loyal security and palace staff desperately probing the ice with trackers, shovels, clawing through the frozen ground with their bare hands in a frantic attempt to reach them. There's something deeply unsettling about imagining that moment, trying to dig out a loved one, knowing that a careless strike of a shovel could deliver the very blow that kills the person you're trying to save. It was a great scene and it was emotionally effective. Unfortunately, that's where my praise for the book largely ends. A romantic subplot is threaded throughout the story, but it feels completely forced. We're told that Lexi's on the verge of sharing a first kiss with a character called Jack before they're interrupted by a helicopter arriving to whisk her away into her royal duty. The problem is that the groundwork just isn't there. The book never does enough to convince us that Jack is the person for Lexi, or that the relationship is meaningful or real. We're clearly meant to feel that Lexi is leaving behind the love of her life to shoulder her responsibilities as heir. This is a heartbreaking sacrifice, but the emotional weight simply isn't earned. The romance is supposed to provide the angst the story needs, and instead it just feels undeveloped and unconvincing. And for a book that's 15 hours long, you'd think there'd be more than enough time to build a believable love story. Instead, Lexi somehow finds time to mess around with Colin, which feels odd given how much the book stresses duty, image, and restraint. Maybe I'm being harsh here, Joseph, but did the romance work for you at all, or did it feel as undeveloped as it did to me?
I agree with everything you just said. Like the primary themes of the book should have been about self-sacrifice. Should have been about showing us that this royal inheritance thing. It's not this Disneyfied romantic thing that it is. It's a life of duty that you do not want. Remember what you said about being the second son should be better.
Yeah.
You know, the scrutiny's not on you. You don't have to, you know, basically do what you want, but you still got the wealth of the family, etc., the status. It was a missed opportunity to show us like how much Lexi could and should have been giving up to like basically serve her family.
And if you're going to have the romance, make us feel something.
Yeah.
What's the point of just dashing it in there? You know, make us miss it, make us want it. And she just didn't.
Yeah, just put it in there for the sake of chicklet, I suppose. It was just in there for the sake of putting it in the romance section.
Yeah.
On Goodreads. If I were Lexi, I'd get down on both knees and pray to whichever god she holds dear that Louis doesn't die. There's nothing like the news that your father and brother were left dead and comatose respectively after a skiing accident to ruin your weekend. To complicate matters, if Louis dies, Lexi will become the undisputed heir to the throne, which will immediately put a giant target on her back. I've read about historical feudal power struggles, and they're not pretty. Another pattern you start to see is that women tend to have little choice or say in the matters, but never seem to come out the other side of it well at the end of the day. Like I was saying, Lady Jane Grey was made Queen of England by her power-hungry father against her will after the death of Henry VIII's only son, and was executed for it by Queen Mary, Henry VIII's eldest daughter. The best possible outcome for Lexi is to avoid cashing in her claim by any means necessary, because if one of her unscrupulous family members wishes to take power, it will mean her death. And without a lifetime of experience in backstabbing political power grabs, she's without means to perceive or neutralise such a threat until the pillow is already over her face. Once Louis dies, however, Lexi is officially locked in. She stops being Lexi from Tasmania and becomes Alexandrina, Princess of Scotland. The first thing I would do after that is gather some friends, and there's only one way to do that, with a marriage pact to a powerful ally, Colin. So, again, I thought like they missed opportunities to show us how feudal families, noble families use marriages to build alliances. It's not necessarily just about love. And everyone kind of knows that already, but like show us the nitty gritty of it, especially when like people don't love each other. Rob Stark's got to marry this girl. And he doesn't show us that, you know. We can see the dilemma.
Yeah. Or give us a morally grey character. Give us a girl who is wishing her twin brother succumbs to his injuries, and or even is willing to force the hand, or put a pillow over his face.
Even that.
Do you know what I mean? Give us a character that we can root for, but also know that they aren't this innocent, perfect person.
100%. I think I'm going to say something that's going to be disgraceful, considering my earlier comments about some of these things on other videos. No, I wasn't going to say that. That would have been disgraceful, though. But what I think could have worked is a touch of unreliable narration on Lexi's part. She orchestrated the deaths of whatever to bring herself into. That would have been beautiful. I wouldn't have liked that.
She set the dynamite on the mountain.
Set the dynamite, to
start trigger the avalanche.
And then Louis in comatose instead of dying, so she has to smother him or whatever, and then reveal that at the end or whatever. That would have been a very beautiful way to tie up the story. It would have been far better than what we got.
I've always said that I like an unreliable narrator.
I know why I don't like it. I know what I don't like about it.
I know. I mean, I can understand why. Who likes to be lied to?
Yeah,
maybe we all do. Maybe there's an argument to say that we all do. To be fair,
getting too deep into it now. But I think that would have been far better than what we got anyway.
Yeah. The royal aspect of this book feels like a MacGuffin. I genuinely struggle to understand what the story thought it was offering me. Is this meant to be an experience? A behind-the-curtain look at how the other side lives? Because if that's the aim, it's completely missed the mark. I wanted proper world building. I wanted detail. I wanted to learn something meaningful about royal life, how the system works, how the power is exercised, how tradition actually constrains people. Instead, we get a surface-level trivia. Yes, I now know that their newspapers get ironed for them, but that's nowhere near enough to justify an entire 15-hour book inside a monarchy. And let's be honest, this book is trading on the British royal family. If you're going to make money off that fascination, then you at least owe the reader some effort, depth, insight, something beyond vibes and aesthetics. It honestly feels like the author was relying on an audience that's already obsessed with the royals to fill the gaps themselves, and that becomes especially clear when you look at how closely the book mirrors real-life royal history, just with the names and details lightly changed. We have a clear Princess Diana analogue, the divorced wife of her heir, adored by the public, who dies tragically, and a Camilla figure, the woman he actually loved and eventually marries later in life. These parallels are so obvious they stop feeling inspired and start feeling borrowed. Joseph, do you think the author leans on our fascination with the royal family as a shortcut rather than doing the heavy lifting of proper world building herself? Would you advise against mirroring events that happen in real life, or do you think the author was giving the readers what they want?
I don't think it's too bad. I'm going to let the author off on one here because I feel like some of the greatest authors of our time. Bro, you read George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones, you start realising how much this guy is actually taken from like feudal Britain. They used to call the king of Angles and Saxons. Does that sound from? They used to call them like protected realm, all that kind of stuff.
Grace and
all of that, literally all of that. So I don't think it's necessarily too bad. I just think because this author has taken from like Princess Diana and very, very recent stuff in the grand scheme of things. If you take from like War of the Roses, no one's gonna care. No one was around back then. There's people that remember what it was like to see Princess Diana on TV. You know, running races at school with her children and stuff like that. So that's probably what it is. I don't think it's too bad. I think she should probably be given a bly for that.
Do you think she was giving the readers what they want? Do you think they were reading and went, Princess Diana?
Probably. I think probably some of them are. Because if you're saying it, then there's got to be other people who are saying it.
Yeah.
Probably. I think you would give her a bly for that, but by no means is this a good story. Elijah, what's my favourite word beginning with F? Okay, what's my second favourite word beginning with F? Say it with me now. Flashback. Clearly, there was some manner of writers and artists meeting at the beginning of the century where they were all clearly and irrefutably commanded to make copious use of the dreaded flashback in all concurrent literary works till the end of time. Rebecca Armitage is apparently no different. During flashbacks to Lexi's boarding school years, we learn the origins of Chris and Amira Shankar and how they formed a tight bond with our twins, Louis and Lexi. Elements of forbidden love rear their heads with an LGBTQ-friendly love affair between Louis and Chris, and helps to illustrate that neither twin is exactly thrilled to be born into a life of duty and self-sacrifice. At the very least, however, Louis seemed to be willing to be who the crown needed him to be outwardly. So obviously he's married a woman, he's married Amira, done his duty, you know, he's producing his heirs or whatever, further in the lineage. Absolutely fine, nothing wrong with that. And it was only really Lexi that was like, I want to go back to my boyfriend in Australia, whatever it was. So I just thought, why isn't Louis the main character?
Yeah, that was...
Do you know what I mean? Like, why is Lexi the main character? She's not really... She's at no point was she ever like fully committed to this royal thing. It was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out to the end where she was out. She was out at the beginning.
I suppose it's just because that's the direction that the author decided to go in. But if that is the case, she should have put some more effort into the main character.
For sure.
Because the whole premise of her story is somebody who wasn't planning to be the queen or in power, and they have now been.
But they should end up the queen then. What the hell? Yeah. How did they end up not the queen after a whole life of not being the queen? So what changed?
Because you got 2 more in it.
Yeah, I got 2 more. Did you do your last one already?
I'm about to.
All right.
Well, no.
Yeah, I'll do one then. Yeah. I'm surprised that the book hasn't written off Jack and Lexi's relationship yet. If the author wants us to feel the gravity of Lexi's world coming down, then we need to see her close the book on her old life and actually sacrifice something that she wants.
Kill him.
Only then will we understand that the romanticizing of royal inheritance is a smokescreen powered by Disney, and that being considered to have royal blood when your blood is as red as anybody else's is not something to wish for. I understand that Lexi and Jack are the end game, and that's what the people want, but people don't always get to choose who they're with. It would leave a bit of a bitter taste in the mouth, but it's reality. In fact, I think a great plot twist would be if Richard orders Jack's murder as a way to lean on Lexi's pressure point. Yeah. She would then not only be devastated, but have to live with the guilt of putting a target on his back through being selfish, selfishly pursuing her desires.
Torture, light torture.
Even that. Cut his eyes out. Have you seen that? All I went to do was cut his eyes out, cut his hands off, and blind him. Have you seen that?
No.
The guy that was like, all I went to do, I'll show you after.
Lexi is being blackmailed. And honestly, I was on board with that immediately. I am a blackmail after all. The problem I have is the author doesn't push the idea anywhere near far enough. All the ingredients for something genuinely interesting were right there, and they're just not used. Her brother is gay. Either he should have been the one getting blackmailed, or Lexi herself should have been the gay one.
He was getting blacked something else.
There's a much braver, more relevant story sitting right in front of the author. Imagine Lexi being forced to jump through increasingly degrading hoops, endorsements, public appearances, manufactured relationships, all to keep a secret buried. Then at some point she decides she's had enough and goes public and comes out of the closet. That could have been something special. It could have explored the fact that even now, in the modern world, in 2026, there are people in the public eye who still can't be themselves without consequences. That feels timely. That feels meaningful. This book just doesn't go there. What it definitely could have done without is the senseless and confusing time skipping. And I don't say that lightly. This might be the worst offender we've dealt with. There were moments where I genuinely was confused about when I was, and I completely lost the thread of the story. Now that's something you never want as an author. Confusion kills engagement. Now, here's where I might be alone. I didn't hate the ending. Not all of it anyway. We spent the entire book reinforcing how terrible Richard would be as a monarch, how scheming and self-interested and potentially disastrous he is, and then Lexi just lets him have the crown. The villain wins. And part of me actually found that refreshing. I can't be the only one that thinks that, surely. Or is the bar so low for this book that I'm grasping at anything that feels different and calling it a win? What do you make of that?
I really don't mind the villain winning. I do find it refreshing as well. Not here, but in general. In general, I don't mind the villain winning. Remember when we read Replay Games and I said the only way that book could have been a 10 out of 10 is if Ben had gotten away at the end.
Yeah.
But I want the villain to take power. I want them to take what they want. I want them... That's who they are, sort of thing. I don't want the hero to just be like, you have it then. Because they can't be that bad then.
Yeah.
I just found it really weak. I felt like the author kind of got bored of the book at the end and was just like, nah, let's wrap it up. Yeah, give it to him, sort of thing. She hadn't done the work to make Lexi the kind of character who would become the queen and become like this allegory of Queen Victoria who sacrificed everything for the crown. Her husband died and she ended up alone and ruled for, decades and decades. And that's kind of what I wanted Lexi to be, like modern day Queen Victoria sort of thing. But she just goes back to Australia, goes back to surfing, whatever she was doing, and lets Richard terrorize Britain for the next. And it's just like, why did I read any of this? I found the ending quite underwhelming. I get that Lexi was being pressured into living a life she never wanted, and that it took courage for her to look the most powerful family in the country, her family, in the eyes and say, no, that's not me. But since the beginning of the story, we knew she didn't want it. How has she actually grown as a character? She leaves the palaces and titles behind, goes back to Tasmania to shack up with her boyfriend, leaving behind her once-in-a-lifetime call-up from destiny itself, and basically gets her old life back perfectly intact. I don't know, for me, it kind of just makes everything pointless. She could have just said no from the start, stayed in Australia. Why did I read this book?
She thought she could do it, and plus she missed Ragu, of course.
I would have rather Louis be the main character. I'd rather Richard be the main character. Rather anybody. Anybody.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what she thought she was doing with this. Hopefully she didn't think she was cooking.
She started on a shaky foundation. That cookie's burnt. The cooking is burnt. What would you give it out of 5?
1. I couldn't tell you.
It sounds harsh, but when you think about it,
what good came from the book?
1 might be generous.
I like the avalanche scene, as I said. But
that's your one. That's the one.
If apart from that, and the avalanche scene shows that she can write.
Yeah.
But I don't know where she was going with this story. I don't know.
No, honestly.
She leaned so heavily. But do you know what? I read that the author, she's an Australian, and she used to follow the British royal family. So it seems like this was a passion for her to just write something about the royal family. And maybe there's so much respect there that she didn't want to push the boundaries. She wanted something to feel real, maybe. But you either want to entertain us, or is this for you? Is the book for you, or are you trying to entertain the reader?
Honestly, as a writer, I've done passion projects before, and normally you leave them in the vault, you leave them on the hard drive.
Yeah,
mate,
don't release them.
Not everything's for release.
Yeah.
Not everything's for release, and that's maybe what this is. But listen, hey, you're selling books, so big up to you.
Yeah, it's quite popular.
I would probably agree with you. I'd probably go to 1. I think 1 is really the highest you can actually go. When you look at the elements of this book, the character that she decided to make the book all about, versus what she had and what she could have done, and where this book could have gone. Because you have to remember, it's about feudal backstabbing, power grabbing, the British throne. It's about everything. And just I didn't really feel like it was about any of that. I think 1 is really the highest you can go, unfortunately.
Do you have a quote of the day?
No, I forgot a quote of the day, actually.
I got a quote.
Would you recommend the book before we do the quote?
I gave it 1. I gave it 1.
You should be like, yes! I recommend it for all ages.
No, I lied. I don't have a quote.
You're the worst.
So yeah, I suppose till next time.
Till next time.